My name is Ethan Mitchell, and before everything changed, my world was made of flour, warmth, and the smell of freshly baked bread. I lived in Wellington, New Zealand, where the ocean wind could be cold enough to make your fingers ache. But inside my little bakery, Harbor Hearth Bakery, everything was warm. The bakery was not fancy, but it was mine. I had inherited the small shop from my uncle after he retired. Every morning, I arrived before sunrise. I unlocked the blue wooden door, turned on the lights, and listened to the quiet hum of the ovens. There was something peaceful about those early hours. The streets outside were almost empty, and Wellington seemed to belong only to the sea and the sleeping houses. I would prepare the dough while listening to the sound of rain against the windows. Baking had never felt like a job to me, felt like breathing. I loved watching simple ingredients become something that could make another person smile. My favorite thing was making fresh sourdough bread. I always believed good bread needed patience. You could not rush the dough. You could not force it to become perfect. You simply had to give it time. I suppose I should have realized that love was exactly the same. At 27, I was not searching for romance. I had dated before, but nothing had ever lasted. My bakery was my home, my responsibility, and my closest companion. Then one rainy Tuesday morning, a stranger walked through my door. He was tall, elegant, and completely out of place among my wooden tables and flour-covered counters. His black coat was damp from the rain. A few strands of dark brown hair had fallen across his forehead. His eyes were deep blue, calm on the surface but strangely tired underneath. I looked up from the counter and smiled politely. "Good morning," I said. He glanced around the bakery before looking directly at me. "Good morning," he replied. His voice was low and confident. I assumed he was another customer, but something about him made me pause. He approached the counter and studied the pastries displayed behind the glass. "What would you recommend?" he asked. I smiled. "That depends on whether you want something sweet or something that makes you feel alive." For the first time, I saw him smile. Something that makes me feel alive sounds interesting. I pointed toward a loaf of freshly baked sourdough. "Try this." He raised an eyebrow. "Bread can make someone feel alive." I laughed softly. "The right bread can." He bought the loaf. But instead of leaving immediately, he remained standing near the counter. He took one bite. His expression changed. "That is surprisingly good," he said. "Surprisingly," I teased. "I might be offended." He laughed quietly. It was the first time I heard that laugh, and for some reason I remembered it. I did not know his name yet. I only knew that he had kind eyes when he forgot to look serious. He finally turned toward the door. Then he stopped. "What is your name?" he asked. "Ethan." "Ethan Mitchell." He nodded slowly. "Adrian Blackwood." The name meant nothing to me at the time. I simply smiled and wished him a good day. He walked into the rain. I watched him disappear down the street. Then I returned to my baking. I thought that would be the end of our meeting. I was wrong. The next morning, Adrian came back. He ordered the same sourdough. The following morning, he returned again. Then again. Soon, seeing Adrian enter through my bakery door became part of my morning routine. Sometimes he ordered coffee. Sometimes he bought pastries he claimed he did not even like. I began teasing him about it. "You really do not like those pastries," I said one morning. "Then why do you keep buying them?" "Because you made them." His answer caught me completely off guard. I looked at him. He looked at me. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Then he smiled. I felt warmth rise into my cheeks. I turned away quickly and pretended to organize the counter. Adrian noticed. "You are blushing," he said. "It is hot near the ovens." I answered. He looked toward the cold window. Of course. I wanted to disappear. Over the next few weeks, our conversations became longer. I learned that Adrian was the CEO of a large technology company based in Auckland. He traveled frequently between Auckland and Wellington. He was successful, wealthy, and constantly surrounded by people. Yet whenever he entered my bakery, he seemed different. He left his expensive world outside the door. Inside my bakery, he was simply Adrian. One evening, a storm hit Wellington. The rain came down so heavily that the streets looked like rivers. I was closing the bakery when Adrian appeared at the door. "You are still open?" he asked. "Barely." He stepped inside. "You should not be walking around in this weather. Neither should you." I laughed. "I am trying to close the shop." "Then let me help." Before I could answer, he took off his expensive coat and began moving chairs toward the tables. I stared at him. "You are a CEO." "I know." "You do not have to move chairs." "I know that too." "Then why are you helping?" "Because you are tired." His answer was so simple that I had nothing to say. When we finally finished closing, the rain was still pouring outside. Adrian looked at me. "How are you getting home?" "I live upstairs." He looked surprised. "You live here?" I nodded. "My apartment is above the bakery." He smiled. "That sounds peaceful." "It is." He walked me toward the stairs, then stopped. "Can I see you tomorrow?" My heart skipped. "You come here almost every day." "That is not what I meant." I looked into his eyes. "What did you mean?" He stepped closer. "I meant, can I see you somewhere that does not smell like bread?" I laughed. "Are you asking me on a date?" "Maybe." The word made my heart beat faster. I looked down for a moment, then I smiled. "Maybe." The next evening, Adrian took me to a small restaurant overlooking Wellington Harbor. I had never been anywhere so elegant. I felt nervous the entire time. Adrian noticed. "You do not need to be nervous around me." I looked at him. "That is easy for you to say." "Why?" "Because you are Adrian Blackwood." He smiled. "And you are Ethan Mitchell." "That sounds much better." I laughed. Dinner passed quickly. We talked about childhood dreams, favorite places, and things we were afraid to admit to other people. Adrian told me he had spent years building his company. I told him I had spent years building my bakery. He listened to every word. Not politely. Actually listened. When we left the restaurant, the rain had stopped. The harbor lights reflected across the dark water. We walked beside each other in comfortable silence. Then Adrian reached for my hand. His fingers slowly intertwined with mine. I looked at our hands, then at him. He gave me a nervous smile. "Is this okay?" I squeezed his hand. Yes. We continued walking, but his hand was warm. For the first time in years, I felt like maybe I was not meant to be alone. When we reached the bakery, Adrian stood outside the door. He looked at me for a long moment. "I really like you, Ethan." My heart seemed to stop. "I like you too." He stepped closer. Close enough that I could feel his breath. "May I kiss you?" I nodded. Adrian gently touched my cheek. Then he leaned toward me. Our lips met softly. It was not rushed. It was not desperate. It was simply warm. When we pulled apart, I smiled without meaning to. Adrian rested his forehead against mine. "You are dangerous, Ethan." I laughed softly. "Why?" "Because I think I could get used to you." I looked into his eyes. "Maybe I could get used to you too." He kissed my forehead, then promised he would see me the next morning. I watched him walk away beneath the harbor lights. That night, I could not sleep. I kept touching my lips, remembering his kiss, remembering his smile, remembering the way he had held my hand. I did not know what the future would bring. I did not know that Adrian would eventually become the center of my entire world. And I certainly did not know how badly that world would one day break. At that moment, I only knew that I was falling in love. And for the first time in my life, I was not afraid of it. The morning after our first kiss, I arrived at the bakery earlier than usual. I told myself it was because I had extra bread to prepare. But deep down, I knew I was waiting for Adrian. I kept glancing toward the door while kneading the dough. Every time the bell rang, my heart jumped. But Adrian did not come during the morning rush. By noon, I started wondering if I had imagined everything between us. Then, just as I was carrying a tray of fresh croissants toward the display case, the bakery door opened. Adrian stood there holding a small bouquet of white flowers. I stared at him. "Those are for me." He smiled. "Unless you have another baker hiding somewhere." I laughed and took the flowers. They were beautiful. I placed them beside the cash register. "You remembered my favorite flowers," I said. "I remember everything about you." His words made my cheeks warm. He leaned across the counter. "Did you miss me?" "Maybe." "That means yes." I smiled. "Maybe it does." Adrian stayed for almost an hour that morning. He sat at my small corner table while I worked. Every few minutes our eyes met, and every time they did, he smiled. I had never experienced anything like it. Someone looking at me as if I were the most interesting person in the room. When the bakery became quiet, Adrian came behind the counter. "Can I help?" I asked. He nodded confidently. "I have managed a company with hundreds of employees. Baking bread cannot be that difficult." I handed him a bowl. "Prove it." Within 10 minutes, flour covered his black shirt. I tried not to laugh. "You are terrible at this." He looked at the dough stuck to his fingers. "I am beginning to understand why you enjoy watching me struggle." "Maybe I do." He stepped closer. "Then I suppose I need private lessons." I raised an eyebrow. "Private lessons cost extra." "How much?" "1 coffee." He smiled. "Deal." We spent the afternoon baking together. Adrian was terrible at first, but he never gave up. Every time he made a mistake, he laughed, and somehow the bakery felt brighter with him inside it. By closing time, he had learned how to shape a loaf properly. He proudly held it up. "Look, I made bread." I smiled. "You made something edible. That is progress." He leaned closer. "You are proud of me." "Very." He kissed my cheek. I immediately forgot what I was going to say. Adrian noticed. "You are adorable when you lose your words." I pushed his shoulder gently. "Go home." He laughed. "Not until you promise tomorrow." "Promise what?" "That you will have dinner with me." I nodded. "Promise." Our relationship slowly became part of my everyday life. Adrian visited the bakery almost every day. Sometimes he came before work. Sometimes after long meetings. Sometimes he simply appeared because he said he missed me. I started leaving his favorite pastry aside before opening. He started leaving little notes beside my coffee. "Good luck today. Eat something. I miss you." Every note became precious to me. One Saturday, Adrian took me to the Wellington Botanic Garden. We walked beneath the trees while the afternoon sun filtered through the leaves. He held my hand the entire time. I rested my head against his shoulder. "I could stay like this forever," I whispered. Adrian kissed the top of my head. "Then stay." I looked at him. "You make it sound easy." "Can be." He stopped walking. Then he turned toward me. "Ethan, I know my life is complicated. I know. But I want you in it." My heart tightened. "I want you too." He pulled me into his arms. I rested against his chest. For a moment, the entire world disappeared. There was only his heartbeat, his arms, and the warmth of being loved. That evening, we sat beside the harbor. Adrian told me about his childhood, his ambitions, his fears, and someone from his past, his first love. His expression became distant when he mentioned him. I asked carefully, "Do you still love him?" Adrian looked at me. No, that chapter ended years ago. I trusted him completely. I never imagined that one day, those words would become a wound. Months passed. Our relationship became stronger. Adrian began staying at my apartment above the bakery. At first, he stayed only on weekends, then several nights a week. Eventually, his toothbrush appeared beside mine. His shirts filled one side of my closet. His watch sat beside my bed. Our lives slowly became one. I loved waking beside him. Sometimes I would open my eyes and find him watching me. "What are you looking at?" I would whisper. "You." He would answer. "Why?" "Because I still cannot believe you are mine." I would smile and pull him closer. "You are not getting rid of me." "Good." He would kiss my forehead. I felt safe with him. I felt chosen. One evening, Adrian surprised me with a key. He placed it in my palm. "What is this?" "The key to my house." I stared at him. "Our house?" He corrected himself. "If you want it to be." I looked at him in disbelief. "Are you asking me to move in with you?" "I am asking you to build a life with me." My eyes filled with tears. Adrian gently wiped one away. "You do not have to answer tonight." I looked down at the key, then back at him. "Yes." His expression softened. "Yes." He pulled me into a tight embrace. I buried my face against his chest. "I love you," I whispered. He kissed my hair. "I love you too." Within a month, I moved into Adrian's beautiful home. Leaving the bakery was the hardest decision I had ever made. I had spent years building that little place. Every wall held memories. Every table carried stories. But he said we could build something together. So I trusted him. I sold the bakery. I packed my things. And I stepped into a completely different life. Our first months together were beautiful. We traveled around New Zealand. We drove along the coast. We stayed in small seaside towns. We watched sunsets together. We cooked breakfast in our kitchen. And sometimes Adrian would come home late just to wrap his arms around me. I believed I had found my forever. One night, we stood on the balcony overlooking Wellington. The city lights shimmered below us. Adrian held me from behind. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That I am happy." He kissed my neck softly. "You deserve happiness." I turned around. "So do you?" He looked into my eyes. "Then promise me something." "What?" "No matter what happens, do not stop choosing me." He smiled. "Promise." I believed him. Those words became the foundation of my heart. But life has a cruel way of testing promises. One afternoon, Adrian received a phone call. His expression changed instantly. "Who was it?" I asked. He looked away. "Someone from my past." I felt a strange chill. "Who?" He hesitated. "Julian." The name meant nothing to me, but the look in Adrian's eyes told me everything. "Is he your first love?" Adrian remained silent for several seconds. Then he nodded. "He is coming back to Wellington." My stomach tightened. "What does he want?" Adrian reached for my hand. "I do not know. But nothing is going to change between us." I wanted to believe him, so I held his hand tighter and told myself that our love was strong enough to survive anything. That night, I fell asleep beside Adrian, completely unaware that somewhere across Wellington, the man he had once loved was already coming home. I remember the night Adrian told me Julian was returning. I tried to convince myself that I had nothing to fear. Adrian had chosen me. He had promised me forever. For the next few days, everything seemed normal. But then Adrian started changing. At first, the changes were so small that I ignored them. He began checking his phone more often. He would step outside whenever someone called. Sometimes he smiled at messages I could not see. I asked him about it once. He simply said it was work. I wanted to trust him, so I did. Then one evening, Adrian came home unusually late. I was waiting in the living room. Dinner had gone cold. "You did not tell me you would be late," I said. He removed his jacket without looking at me. "Something came up." "What happened?" He sighed. "Julian arrived today." My heart sank. "You saw him?" "Yes." "How is he?" Adrian looked at me. "Why are you asking?" "Because he is important to you." He walked past me. "It was years ago, Ethan." I followed him. "But you said nothing would change." "Nothing has changed." "Then why do you look so different?" He stopped. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he came closer and kissed my forehead. "You are overthinking." I wanted to believe him, so I let the conversation end. The next morning, Adrian left earlier than usual. He kissed me before leaving, but the kiss felt different. There was no warmth behind it. I stood at the window and watched his car disappear. Something inside me whispered that I was losing him. I tried to silence that feeling. I focused on the life we had built. I cleaned the house. I cooked dinner. I waited for him. But Adrian came home later each night. Sometimes he barely spoke. Sometimes he seemed irritated by my questions. One evening, I asked if he wanted dinner. "I already ate." "With Julian." The words struck harder than they should have. I forced a smile. "You could have told me." "I was busy." He walked away. I stood in the kitchen alone. That was the first night I cried quietly so he would not hear. The following week became worse. Adrian stopped taking me with him to events. He stopped introducing me proudly as his partner. When someone asked about me, he simply changed the subject. I began feeling like a secret inside my own home. One afternoon, I found a photograph on his desk. It showed Adrian and Julian together years ago. They looked young, happy, in love. I stared at it for a long time. Then Adrian walked into the room. "Why are you looking at that?" I turned toward him. "You kept it." "It is an old photograph. You never told me you still had it." He took it from my hand. "It does not matter." I looked into his eyes. "Does he matter?" Adrian's expression hardened. "Stop asking me questions about Julian." I flinched. I was not trying to fight. "Then stop making everything about him." I wanted to tell him that he was the one making everything about Julian. But I stayed silent. That night, Adrian slept beside me. Remembering when he used to hold me while we slept, I reached toward him, but stopped. I was afraid he would move away. Days became weeks. The distance between us grew. Then Julian started appearing at Adrian's company events. Photographs of them began appearing online. They stood together at dinners. They laughed together. They looked comfortable. I tried not to look, but every picture felt like another crack in my heart. One evening, Adrian came home and found me sitting on the couch. I had been crying. He looked annoyed rather than concerned. "What now?" I looked at him. "Do you still love me?" He was silent. That silence destroyed something inside me. Finally, he answered, "I do not know." I felt like the floor had disappeared. "You do not know." He rubbed his forehead. "Everything is complicated." I stood up. "It was never complicated before Julian came back." He stared at me. "Maybe you should stop blaming him." "I am not blaming him. I am asking you to choose me." His eyes became cold. "I cannot keep having this conversation." "Then when can I have it?" He walked away. I followed him. "Adrian." He turned around sharply. "What do you want from me?" "I want my partner back." His face softened for half a second. Then the softness disappeared. "You have become too dependent on me." The words cut deeply. I left the room. I locked myself in the bathroom. I sat on the floor and covered my mouth so he would not hear me cry. I remembered the bakery, the smell of bread, the early mornings, the life I had before him. I had given everything up because I believed in us. And now I barely recognized myself. A few days later, Adrian forgot our anniversary. I prepared dinner. I bought his favorite wine. I even made a small cake. But he never came home. At midnight, I received a message. Sorry, something came up. I stared at the words until my eyes blurred. I blew out the candles alone. The next morning, Adrian came home. Where were you? He asked. I was with Julian. Again. I looked at him. Did you even remember what yesterday was? He frowned. Yesterday. Our anniversary. His expression changed. Ethan, I have been busy. You forgot. I whispered. He said nothing. I picked up the untouched cake. I threw it into the bin. Then I walked away. Something inside me had finally begun to die. Still, I loved him. That was the cruelest part. Even when he hurt me, I still wanted him to come back. One rainy evening, I found Adrian preparing to leave. Where are you going? He did not answer immediately. I am meeting Julian. Tonight. Why? He sighed. Because he needs me. I stared at him. And what about me? You will be fine. That answer broke my heart. I stepped closer. Adrian, please. He looked at me. I am tired. I know. But I am tired too. I reached for his hand. He pulled away. Do not make this harder. Then he left. I stood alone in the hallway, listening to the door close. That night, I realized something terrifying. I was no longer afraid of losing Adrian. I was afraid of losing myself. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. I walked into the kitchen, made coffee, and stared through the window. Wellington was covered in gray clouds. I thought about the bakery I had sold, the life I had abandoned, the person I used to be. For the first time, I wondered whether I could become Ethan again. Not Adrian's partner. Not the man waiting for someone else's attention. Just Ethan. I did not know yet how I would rebuild my life. But somewhere inside me, a tiny voice whispered that I deserved more. Then my phone rang. It was Adrian. I answered. His voice was unusually gentle. Where are you? At home. I am coming back soon. I closed my eyes. I wanted to believe him, but deep inside I already knew something was coming, and it was going to change my life forever. I did not know how right my instincts were that morning. Adrian came home just before noon. He walked through the front door carrying no flowers, no apology, and no explanation. I was sitting quietly near the window. He looked at me for several seconds. Why are you so quiet? I looked at him. Because I am tired of pretending everything is fine. He frowned. Ethan, I told you things are complicated. I stood up slowly. No, Adrian, they are not complicated. You made them complicated. He looked away. I could see the irritation returning to his face. I wanted to scream. Instead, I asked one question. Do you still want me? He remained silent. That silence was my answer. My eyes filled with tears. I wiped them before he could see. Then he said something I would never forget. Maybe we need some space. I stared at him. Space? Yes. I need time to understand what I want. I nodded slowly. But you already know what you want. His eyes met mine. Do not make assumptions. I smiled sadly. I am not making assumptions anymore. I am finally listening. He walked upstairs without another word. I remained in the living room. For the first time, I felt strangely calm. The pain was still there, but beneath the pain was something stronger. Acceptance. That evening, Adrian left again. He said he had a meeting. I knew where he was going. I did not ask. Instead, I opened my old laptop. I searched through photographs from the bakery. There was one picture of me standing behind the counter. My face was covered in flour. I was smiling. I barely recognized that person. He looked happy. He looked free. I touched the screen. "I miss you, Ethan," I whispered to myself. Then I remembered something my uncle had once told me. A baker can always start again. I spent the entire night thinking. By morning, I had made a decision. I would find myself again. Even if Adrian never loved me again, I would learn to love myself. I packed a small bag. I did not leave the house yet. I simply placed my belongings together. I needed time. I needed somewhere to go. But before I could make another decision, Adrian came home. It was nearly evening. He looked exhausted. He barely noticed my bag. "Are you leaving?" I looked at him. "Maybe." His face changed. "Where would you go?" "I do not know yet." He stepped closer. "Ethan." I looked into his eyes. "Do you remember the promise you made to me?" "Which one?" "You promised you would always choose me." His expression became uncomfortable. I waited. Those words hurt. But they also freed me. "Yes, they do." I picked up my bag. "I am going to stay with a friend tonight." He nodded. "Maybe that is best." I walked toward the door. Then I stopped. I turned around one last time. "I loved you more than I loved myself." Adrian said nothing. "I hope one day you understand what that cost me." Then I left. The rain had started again. Wellington looked blurred through my tears. I walked without knowing where I was going. My feet eventually carried me toward the riverfront. I sat on a bench overlooking the dark water. The wind was cold. I wrapped my arms around myself. For the first time in 4 years, I was completely alone. I cried until my chest hurt. I cried for the bakery. I cried for our first kiss. I cried for every promise. I cried for the man I thought Adrian was. Then I heard footsteps behind me. I wiped my face quickly. A man stopped several steps away. He was holding an umbrella. He looked around 30. His brown hair was slightly messy from the wind. His eyes were warm and gentle. He noticed my tears. "Are you all right?" I tried to smile. "I am fine." He gave me a soft look. "You do not look fine." I laughed bitterly. "That obvious?" "A little." He approached slowly. He held the umbrella above both of us. The rain continued falling around us. But suddenly I was warm. He sat on the other end of the bench. "You do not have to tell me what happened." I looked at him. "Then why did you stay?" "Because sometimes people need someone nearby." His answer surprised me. I looked toward the river. "My name is Ethan." He smiled. "I am Noah. Noah Bennett." "Nice to meet you, Ethan." I nodded. We sat quietly. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. The silence did not feel uncomfortable. Felt safe. Eventually, I started crying again. Noah did not ask me to stop. He simply handed me a clean handkerchief. "Thank you." "You are welcome." I looked at him. "Why are you being kind to a stranger?" "Because someone was kind to me when I needed it." His words stayed with me. I had forgotten what simple kindness felt like. Noah stood after a while. "Do you have somewhere safe to sleep tonight?" I hesitated. "I have a friend nearby." "Good. Then please go there." "You should not be alone tonight." I smiled weakly. "You sound like my mother." He laughed softly. "I will take that as a compliment." Before leaving, Noah gave me a small card. "My number is on it. You do not have to call. But if you ever need someone to talk to, you can." I looked at the card. "Thank you, Noah." He smiled. "Take care of yourself, Ethan." Then he walked away. I watched him disappear into the rain. Something about him stayed in my mind. Not romance. Not yet. Just kindness. That night, I stayed at my friend's apartment. I barely slept. The next morning, I woke with a strange sense of determination. I called my uncle. He answered immediately. "Ethan, I need your help." He was silent for a moment. Then he asked, "What happened?" I told him everything. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said something that made me cry. "Come home." I returned to the bakery building later that afternoon. The shop had changed owners after I sold it. I stood outside staring through the window. The new owner had painted the walls, but the smell of bread still drifted onto the street. I closed my eyes. For a moment, I could see my younger self behind the counter. Then my phone vibrated. It was Noah. I stared at his name. We had only met once. Yet I answered, "Hello." His voice immediately made me smile. "Are you somewhere safe?" "Yes." "Good. I was wondering if you ate today." I realized I had not. "No." "Then let me buy you lunch." I hesitated. "Why?" "Because you look like someone who needs a proper meal." I laughed softly. "You are very persistent. Only when it matters." We met at a small cafe near the waterfront. Noah was already waiting. When he saw me, he smiled. "You look better." "I feel better." "That is good." We ate together. For the first time in weeks, I laughed without forcing it. Noah never asked me to forget Adrian. He never criticized him. He simply listened. When I finished speaking, Noah said something quietly. "You gave someone your whole heart. That does not make you foolish. It makes you capable of loving deeply." I looked at him. No one has ever said that to me. Maybe someone should have. Our eyes met. There was something warm in his expression. My heart moved slightly, not because I was ready to love again, but because I felt seen. That evening, Noah walked me to the bus stop. Before leaving, he gently touched my shoulder. "You are going to be okay." I looked at him. "How do you know?" "Because you are still standing." He smiled. And sometimes that is the beginning of everything. I watched him leave. For the first time since Adrian betrayed me, I felt hope. I did not know where that hope would lead. I only knew that Noah had appeared when I needed kindness most. And somewhere deep inside my broken heart, a new chapter had quietly begun. The morning after meeting Noah, I woke up with a strange feeling in my chest. For the first time in months, I was not thinking about Adrian. I was thinking about the man who had sat beside me in the rain. Noah had not promised me anything. He had not asked for anything. He had simply treated me like I mattered. That kindness stayed with me. I decided I needed to rebuild my life. I called my uncle again. I told him I wanted to bake. His voice immediately became excited. "Then come back to the kitchen." I returned to the bakery where I had first learned everything. My uncle let me use the old kitchen behind his house. The first morning, I mixed flour, water, salt, and yeast. My hands remembered everything. For the first time in years, I felt like Ethan again. I began selling bread at a small weekend market. At first, only a few people came. Then more customers discovered my sourdough. Soon, people began asking when my bread would be available. I worked harder every day. I was tired. But it was the kind of tiredness that made me proud. Noah continued checking on me. Sometimes he brought coffee. Sometimes he helped carry the bread baskets. Sometimes he simply sat nearby while I worked. "You are becoming famous," he teased. I laughed. "I only sell bread." That is how every great baker starts. One afternoon, Noah helped me deliver bread along the Wellington waterfront. The wind was strong. I struggled to keep my boxes from falling. Noah laughed and caught one before it hit the ground. "You need help?" "I can manage." "You clearly cannot." I pushed his shoulder. "You are annoying." "But you smiled." I realized he was right. I was smiling. Noah looked at me for a long moment. "I like seeing you happy." My heart fluttered. I looked away. You are making me embarrassed. Good. You deserve to blush sometimes. I laughed. Our friendship slowly became something deeper. We spent evenings walking along the waterfront. We talked about everything: childhood memories, dreams, failures, fears. Noah told me he had once lost someone important too. He understood what it meant to rebuild. One evening, we sat beneath the lights near the harbor. Noah reached for my hand. I looked down, then back at him. Is this okay? I asked. He nodded. Only if you want it. I slowly intertwined my fingers with his. Felt natural. Safe. Noah squeezed my hand. I do not want to rush you. I know. I am willing to wait. Those words made my heart ache in the best way. I leaned closer. Our shoulders touched. Noah looked at me. Ethan. Yes. Can I kiss you? I took a breath, then nodded. He leaned toward me. Our lips met gently. There was no urgency, no demand, only tenderness. When we separated, Noah rested his forehead against mine. Are you okay? I smiled. For the first time in a long time, yes. Meanwhile, Adrian's life was beginning to collapse. His relationship with Julian had become unstable. Julian had never returned because he wanted a simple life. He wanted Adrian's money, his influence, his company. When Adrian began losing control of his business, Julian disappeared. Adrian tried to save everything, but the damage was already done. Investors withdrew. The company collapsed. His luxury home was sold. His accounts were frozen. The man who once controlled everything suddenly had nothing. One evening, I heard his name on the news. I watched silently. The former CEO of Blackwood Technologies was reportedly facing financial ruin. I turned off the television. Noah noticed my expression. Are you all right? I nodded. I think I finally understand something. What? Losing someone does not mean you have to lose yourself. Noah smiled. That is true. Months passed. My small bread business grew. I opened a new bakery near the Wellington waterfront. I named it Harbor Hearth again. The first morning I opened the doors, Noah stood beside me. You did it. I looked around the warm little bakery. We did it. He smiled. I kissed his cheek. Thank you. For what? For finding me that night. He held my hand. I would find you again, even if I had to search the whole country. I laughed. You are dangerously romantic. Only with you. Our relationship became stronger. We cooked together. We argued about silly things. We laughed. We danced in the kitchen. And every night, I fell asleep feeling safe. 1 year later, Noah proposed to me beside Wellington Harbor. There were no cameras. No expensive decorations. Just the ocean, the evening sky, and the man I loved, Ethan. He took my hands. You taught me that broken things can become beautiful again. My eyes filled with tears. Noah knelt down. Will you marry me? I laughed through my tears. Yes. He slipped the ring onto my finger, then stood and kissed me. I held him tightly. I love you. I love you too. We married surrounded by the people who supported us. It was a simple ceremony, but it was the happiest day of my life. Years later, our bakery became known throughout Wellington. People came for the bread, but they stayed because of the warmth. I never forgot where I came from, and I never forgot the man I used to be. One rainy morning, I received a strange request. Someone had asked for a loaf of sourdough to be delivered anonymously. There was no name, only an address. I recognized the address immediately. It belonged to Adrian. I stood behind the counter for a long time. Noah noticed. You know him? I nodded. He is someone from my past. Do you want to send the bread? I looked at the loaf. Yes. Why? Because once, I believed bread could make someone feel alive. I want him to remember that every morning after that, one fresh loaf was delivered to Adrian. He never knew where it came from. He had lost almost everything. He lived quietly, far away from the world he once controlled. But every morning he received bread. One day, Adrian asked the delivery driver who had sent it. The driver simply said, "Anonymous." Adrian never discovered the truth. I never wanted him to. I was not sending the bread because I wanted him back. I was sending it because I had survived. I had loved. I had been broken. And I had learned how to become whole again. Noah would sometimes find me watching the sunrise beside our bakery. He would wrap his arms around me from behind. "What are you thinking?" I would smile. "About how lucky I am." He would kiss my cheek. "I love you." I would turn around and kiss him softly. "I love you too." Looking back, I realize Adrian was not the end of my story. He was the chapter that taught me to choose myself. Noah was the chapter that taught me what real love felt like. And the bread I sent every morning was not forgiveness for Adrian. It was proof that his betrayal had never destroyed the kindness inside me. I had once believed losing Adrian meant losing everything. Now I understood. Sometimes losing the wrong person is how you finally find your way home. And every morning, as the ovens warmed our bakery and Wellington woke beneath the golden sunrise, I stood beside Noah, holding his hand. I knew I had finally found the life I was meant to live. A life built on love. A life built on trust. A life built on bread. And a love that never asked me to become someone else.